Hey, it's Coach Santi. I'm just coming on here to really talk about some strings. I've been meaning to do some string reviews since I don't know, December, or honestly since I really started playing tennis. I love being a nerd about different strings and the hybrids and stuff like that. But as of recently, I've been really wanting to, and now that I have a decently consistent posting schedule, I feel that I can start talking about strings. Now, not to get off track too much, I can talk about that a little bit later, but today we're going to be talking about Hyper-G. Different gauges too, not just the 1.30, but also the 125 and the 17 gauge, so it's a 120. So I'll be talking about all three of those, 130, 125, and 120. I've been wanting to try the 19 gauge. I see someone on like Facebook Marketplace has it like locally, but I haven't gotten the chance to get it yet. To immediately not talk too much, if you just need info right away, is Hyper-G worth it? That could mean different things to different people, whether it's budget, whether it's performance, whether it's durability. It can be a lot of things, which I'm going to go into depth soon. But as a general sense, Hyper-G is a solid B tier string. I would say almost C tier, but it outperforms plenty of other strings that try to do the same thing Hyper-G does but fail. Hyper-G is one of those strings where it is the basis. It is what you compare other strings to. That's mostly due to, in my experience, its decent spin, power, and durability, technically. I've been told that this is probably the best string performance-wise for most college players, since most people can't really afford the higher price point for strings, at least to get it consistently strung. I've heard that the $13.99 USD is worth it for this kind of string. But before I get into the price point, let's talk about the different categories. Let's start with spin. I would give this string a B minus in spin. It is not horrible. I'm not saying it's a bad spin string, and I'm actually saying it's a quite good spin string. The problem is, it doesn't give enough. Like, it does its job well, it does give you that spin, but it doesn't do that by snapback, which is extremely popular nowadays. What I'm talking about, I'll probably put footage on the screen. Snapback is when the string is set in place, and when you move it, it immediately snaps back into place once you let go. That's what we call snapback. And the theory is that's what causes a different type of spin, whereas textured strings produce controlled spin, but they don't improve or increase the spin more than they just make it possible. Round strings are mostly going to add control or allow the whatever hybrid string they're using to move more and allow more snapback. There's a whole in-depth thing. I could talk about it in a separate video. Hyper-G does spin for the texture pretty well. I believe it's a four-sided string. That kind of causes a lot of spin from just hitting the ball. But I've noticed since I'm a college player, the faster I swing, sometimes the spin plateaus. I find myself getting the same exact spin on the ball no matter how fast I swing, which is a good and a bad thing for certain players. If you are a intermediate player, or let's say you're 2.5 to 3.5, and you want to start experimenting with polyesters, specifically for spin, I would definitely recommend Hyper-G. It gives you the spin naturally and immediately, whereas some other strings, you kind of have to work for it. But my problem is, at this point in my game, I'm able to generate my own spin, so I don't need that natural spin anymore. I need to develop even more spin. And I feel like the Hyper-G kind of plateaus, or at least has like a ceiling of the amount of spin you can get. So yeah, that's why I call it a B minus. It does its job well, and for anyone who isn't swinging that fast, it gives them plenty of spin. But for me, I've seen other alternatives, which I'll talk about in different videos, that do the same thing but better. As long as you're obviously swinging fast enough, which I do at a college level. Now, onto power. I think this is a decent power string. I will give it, again, a B minus. Me personally, I don't consider this a power string, but at certain tensions, you can definitely make it very powerful. Especially on 100 head size rackets, it'll be a boom kind of feel. You don't have to worry about having to hit the ball really hard. The power does come naturally. Again, with the automatic natural power, you have to make sure you string at lower tension and also make sure you're not swinging too fast or it kind of feels launchy. That's what I feel when I'm hitting with it. And also, I'm not the type of person who needs that power. I actually prefer control. This is why I string at a higher tension, more like 54 to 58, depending on the day and the temperature and stuff. I usually go 54 by 50 right now since it's starting to heat up, but I used to go 56. For me, personally, I string it at different levels, 52, 54, 48. The best I found for power, obviously, was the 48. And I feel like the power completely cancels out the higher, like around 51, 52 tension. No, I would say 53 tension, it cancels out. It turns immediately into a control string, which I don't really like. I kind of like a higher tension string that can still develop power. Not a string for me, power-wise, but due respect, it's not a bad power string. Again, if you are a 2.5 to 3.5 player and you want to start implementing power, honestly, Hyper-G wouldn't be my first pick. I would definitely go Alu Power or Element. Even though it's a higher price point, I believe you would be able to generate way more power and get a better bang for your buck, me personally. Or I would just stick with multi-filament, but probably get a better quality one. So if you're coming from Synthetic Gut Power from Wilson, you would move up a tier to NXT Comfort, or sometimes NXT Power. The reason why I don't like NXT Power is it has a coating that wears off, and I don't like it for me personally. But NXT Comfort gives you enough power if you're looking for a specifically power string. Now onto control. I actually will give this a higher grade than usual. I will give it a B+. It's not quite an A because it's not a control-oriented string, but it does do control decently well. Like I said earlier, once you start stringing it at 52, 53, that's when the control really kicks in and the power immediately loses. But it's not detrimental. I've noticed that if I string it at 56, or even 58, it's giving me a great control shot without being too boardy. That's usually the balance you have to find, where it's between super stiff and very good control, where it still has that pocketing. I've noticed 54, 55, it has decent pocketing and control. I have no complaints about it. It's a decent control string when you want it to be. I won't really hate on it too much. Again, if you're looking for a control type of string, I would just suggest buying. I use Luxilon and Wilson and Toraline primarily, so I'm gonna be talking about those most of the time. If you want a control string, I would recommend Luxilon 4G. That's the best tension maintenance and control string that I've used ever. But a good one, if you want to stay in the Solinco family, would be Confidential. I would not recommend Confidential Soft, and I'll talk about that in a different video. But Confidential itself is a great control string, especially at the 130 gauge. It's going to give you decent control and great pocketing. I noticed I had a lot of fun with that string. I just didn't find that performance, but on that string, you're not really supposed to find performance, in my opinion. You're supposed to find consistency. Control, it's a B to B+. I wouldn't recommend it primarily as a control string, but if you really like the color, you really like Hyper-G, stick to it. Then there comes tension maintenance. Tension maintenance just means how long it can keep the same tension and when it drops off and when it kind of dulls out. I clump all that to durability. Tension maintenance, this is a great string as long as you either pre-stretch it or you break it in. I've noticed for the first hour or two, the tension will drastically change and it'll feel like almost a completely different string after an hour or two. But once you hit that hour mark, the tension will feel the same for the next however long it takes for you to break the string. I will say, when I pre-stretched it, it felt way better immediately. I didn't have to worry about that break-in period, which I didn't like anyways, because usually in the break-in period, you can get a little bit more power, a little bit more spin. I didn't find that with Hyper-G. I only found that it would just change in tension. So I would recommend, if you want good tension maintenance, pre-stretch it, and then it'll feel pretty good and it'll stay at the 52, 51 range for, I would say, 10 hours. I noticed I noticed no difference 10 hours, and I actually wanted to cut out the string because it happened to dull on me. And that's a different thing, where how is its durability spin-wise? Since it's a four-sided string, it will dull out really quick, and it will notch very quickly. I've only noticed one specific string that I'm using right now that doesn't do that as often, but I'm doing a hybrid so that it doesn't do that. The Hyper G will notch up and get dull on you quite quickly. I'll give that part like a C. It's kind of bad in it. Almost a D. I wouldn't give it a D because I've experienced worse, but it's a decent string as long as you string it correctly. I would recommend, if you want to completely avoid the notching and you want to get a lot more spin on it, I would recommend hybriding it with Hyper G round in the cross and Hyper G normal in the mains. The round string kind of allows the main string to move without notching as much and without as much friction, which causes more spin, less breakage, and yada yada yada. And I think they come at the same price point, so you're basically paying the same for a better string. I should have mentioned that earlier, where you'll probably get more spin with the Hyper G round in the cross. So that'll also increase the grade of spin to, I would say, to a B plus or A tier, honestly. I tried it and it was pretty fun. It's just not the string for me, though, unfortunately. Without hybriding, it's pretty poor at keeping a good durability dullness wise, and I find that it breaks on me quite often. Where it'll be about the same price point as a Luxilon, because I feel like Luxilons last way longer and play a little bit better. I'd rather just use a Luxilon string than having to cut out or having the Hyper G break on me multiple times in a week. So, yeah, durability overall, I'd give it about a C plus. It's not that great unless you pre-stretch it, and even when you do that, by itself, it won't do too well. I will say, if you add in Hyper G round in the cross, that bumps it up to a B plus. The durability does come back a little bit better, and I don't think a lot of people know that. You can save a lot of money by just buying a second set of string that's a Hyper G round, which is the same price point, and use half the sets in each frame. So we went over power, we went over spin, we went over control and durability. Now the last thing is budget or price point. This comes in at $13.99. It's not a expensive string in any sort of the matter. There's string out there that costs $20 to $25, and that's not including the natural gut, which often comes to around $60 total for one set, which is outrageous. But it is not an expensive string at all. It is basically a meal. You can, if you're fasting on your diet, you can afford purchasing a Hyper G set. Now, is it worth it at the price point? That's the problem. Although it is a cheaper string than most, I would say it doesn't keep up good stats as a cheaper string. Because you're getting a cheaper string, you get cheaper quality, which I actually wouldn't say about a specific brand that I will be talking about in a different video. And one of the strings I'm using currently and hasn't broken on me. It's cheaper than Hyper G, and it gives you more stats, spin, power, everything, and comfort. It clears it, but that's another day. We're talking about Hyper G right now. Price point, I would say it is worth it if you're afraid to try out different strings from different brands. If you just want a broadly reviewed string that everyone can say a thumbs up to, yes, I would say it's great for its price point compared to other strings where people love the string, but it's too expensive at $21 or so, and it's kind of hard to keep up with that kind of budget. I would suggest buying a whole reel of it just to be safe if you really like the string. I don't, which is why I buy other string. If you also want to save money on it too, I would suggest buying the Hyper G round so that it lasts a little bit longer and plays way better for a longer period of time. You would be saving a decent amount of money compared to buying just one set of Hyper G normal. I will say, purely based off the price, I would say A-, But because the stats are lowered and it's not a very long-lasting string, I would say it's a B plus to B for the price point. It's not bad in any respect of the word, but it doesn't last as long as other strings at higher price points, which are arguably better for that price. So yeah, we come to the end of the video. Should you buy this string? Depends on the person. If you're tired of using multi-filaments and you want a little bit more oomph, but you don't want to risk spending money on different strings that you have no idea about, I would recommend Hyper-G instantly. It is a well peer-reviewed string that most people don't have issues with. I'm one of those people that do, but that's for me personally. For a person who's new into polyester strings, this is a perfect, let's say, a perfect baseline of a string where it'll give you that extra spin and power, and it'll start you on your journey for finding string. Is this a string for recreational? Sure, why not? If you're able to play points pretty well and you want to find a little bit more in your string, yes, that's great for recreational. I would never recommend this for beginners. I've noticed that it can cause tennis elbow sometimes due to its inconsistencies without using like a dampener or something. I would kind of recommend it to a recreational point player, but where it really shines is during leagues or matches, where you're new to matches and you want a little bit more oomph to your ball. That's when I would recommend the Hyper-G. Then it comes college. If you're sponsored by Solinco, then of course use it. If you're a more control-oriented player, I would definitely suggest Confidential instead. But if you really need that spin, which most people do, I guess stick with it. Try to get some Hyper-G round in the cross to make sure you get a little more spin in the air. For pro play, I don't see why any pro would use it, which I think you see a trend in way less pro players using it unless they're in the lower entry level tiers, just because of the budget. I will say this though, do not base your string choice on pros. Most, if not all of them, are sponsored and are paid to play with those strings. So of course they're going to play with the, let's say, Luxilon or Luxilon. Luxilon has a huge amount of sponsors on tour, either through Wilson or just through using the string, and mostly Alu Power and 4G. So I wouldn't say base your purchases on pro play. They have their own set of conditions. If I were paid to use the string, I would use the string. It wouldn't matter if it was a great string, bad string, long lasting, cheap, expensive. I would just use it because I'm getting paid to do it. So keep that in mind. But would I recommend it for you? That depends. You can contact me through the comments below, or reach out to Grispin Tennis and reach out to us and say, hey, I need to figure out what string do I need. It really depends on your experience with strings, your experience with tennis. Are you injury prone? What are you looking for in your game? What are you looking for in a string? Yada, yada, yada. If anyone else has this kind of experience with Hyper-G, please comment down below. I often feel really crazy when I say I hate Hyper-G, and people are like, what? What are you talking about? This is the best string I've used. And this is coming from someone who grew up with Hyper-G. I used Hyper-G for all of my tournament experience. I don't think I ever used any other string unless it was in my younger days when I used NXT Comfort. But even then, as soon as I transferred into polyester, I used Hyper-G primarily until basically 3 years ago. I stopped using it and I was able to explore strings on my own. Ever since then, I never went back. I've tried a couple times, which I will say the thinner gauge, the 1.20, if you can get this Hyper-G string in the thinnest gauge possible, yes, sure, use it. The thinner it is, the more spin and power you'll get. And I will say the 120 is playable. I don't hate it. But in the 130 gauge, God, it just feels really, really inconsistent. It feels like I'm hitting with... It feels like a 145 gauge. Like at a 130. I've never hit with a different string that feels that dense and thick. I just don't like it. But anyways, that's my spiel. Hyper-G is a solid string that is good for certain people. I wouldn't recommend it for myself, but I would recommend it for you. And yeah, I have more videos coming out soon. I have plenty of string reviews that I have in the backlog. I'll be talking about more Solinco strings, like Confidential and Confidential Soft, as well as plenty of Luxilon strings. In fact, almost all of the Luxilon strings I will be sending out a review on, just because I really do like Luxilon strings, as well as some Wilson strings. I don't try all of them because most of them are multi-filament, and that's not for me. But I will try them and review them for you. And also, the brand that I'm currently using partially in a hybrid build is Tourline, specifically Wasabi, which is going to spark some funny business from some friends of mine in the comments probably. But I will be reviewing some of the Tourline strings if I can get my hands on them. And just subscribe if you're interested in more reviews from a college level rather than a coach level. I notice a lot of the reviews out there are very much from a coach level or from a sponsored level. I am not sponsored by any of these people. I will say I do work with Wilson or for Wilson to string. That's it. They don't pay me I have no incentive to talk good or bad about their strings whatsoever. And neither do I have that good or bad intention to do so. I'm just objectively reviewing all these strings and just to further the string community and try to get a good consensus on what's actually good and what's actually not. If you're interested from a college perspective, go ahead, subscribe. I'll be releasing more of these, and I also have some shorts of me stringing, so if that interests you, go ahead and check it out. And I'm affiliated with Grispin Tennis as well. A link down below if you're interested. If you're in I'd say South Bay area and you're interested in private lessons, clinics, cardio tennis, tournaments, stringing, anything to do with tennis, we do. So come on over, just say hi, check out our website, and have a good day. Make sure to regrip your racket.